Hi everyone, my name is Max Garaffa. I'm going to be talking to you today about understanding your attack surface. This has been called the fun talk by me. So a bit about me. So I sit across red and blue team, more towards red these days, and this has involved running some of our attack surface mapping engagements. So to understand what an attack surface is, we really have to understand what an attack vector is. So for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much anything that you could use to exploit an organization. And then an attack surface would just be the sum of all of these combined and the ones that are specifically relevant to that organization. Brief history of attack surface management. So this came really from something quite organic. It was more that people were really approaching our red team engagements from quite an OSINT heavy perspective. A lot of us are quite active with groups like Trace Labs, where we locate missing people with OSINT techniques using anything you can find to get intel on active missing persons cases. So this kind of shaped our approach. I know everyone's heard of Google dorking, all right? Who hasn't? But we're seeing more and more stuff that just companies have no visibility of, because at the end of it, a lot of the time it's just end employees uploading stuff to GitHub on public with keys and everything in them. And gamified. You know, I'm really talking about, I suppose, the competitive bravado between consultants here. It's who can find the keys to the castle. You know, it's all very well exploiting a service you find, but if you're breaking into a house, how cool would it be to find the spare key under the doormat? A whistle-stop tour of the gallery of uh-ohs. This is a folder on my desktop that I just keep. These are some of the nicest finds of things we've found during these engagements. We've got here an open Trello board that we actually did stumble across from a Google Doc. This has got the Atlassian environment with the user and creds just sat there. Got somebody else who's just posted something to GitHub with some keys in there. These red lines, we sometimes get a lot less than the red lines, but I'll tell you right now, if you're doing it with paint, we're really good at undoing those. So what's in scope, really? I won't ask the room, because it's a trick question, really. It's everything. If you guys came with somebody from your organization today, I'd suggest you have a look at them a sec, because they also form part of your attack surface. So I think, in my head, it breaks quite cleanly down into people, services, data, and infrastructure. It's not all-encompassing. This isn't the gospel. This is just from my perspective, anyway. There's a lot going on here. So how do we quantify an attack surface? So, those axes do not make any sense. But on the X there, we've got the awareness internally from a company of an asset. And then across the bottom there on the Y, we've got how visible it is to red teamers or attackers. So we've got right in the bottom there on the left, right at the bottom, we've got VPN server, domain. You know you've got a domain. Everyone's got a website. And most people after the pandemic have got a VPN as well. But what you don't see a lot of is, legacy comms infrastructure. These are the kind of things we forget about. We spin them up, move on to something else. We all got teams. We forgot about our SIP servers. They're just sat there still in a lot of cases. At the top there, you've got, on the left, some old Java service waiting to get royally boofed. That's a choice of words I might regret now, but so it's very visible from a company's perspective. Well, it's not very visible from a company's perspective, but outside in, we're seeing it quite clearly. This is the kind of stuff that would just show up on Showdown if we put your company name in, which any script kiddie could get away with realistically. If we're looking at services, you know, we're all in these. O365, Teams, Google Workspace. We're also embedded with them. I'd like to consider these, imagine these are all third parties. You'd never consider Microsoft a third party, really, for how integrated we are with Teams, email. Our products are sat there on Azure. But recently we had the Lapsus group compromise Microsoft, which led to the supply chain further down with Okta. You have identity access management providers just going, yeah, we got popped by old school bribery. It just makes you think, do you vet your suppliers? And how far along this supply chain do you actually go? People. Again, we see all kinds of things on social media. It's really about digital hygiene. People have two things primarily. They have access and information. I have friends who are lawyers, regularly post a Snapchat with their monitor in there. Every week you'll find some juicy detail about something you really shouldn't know about. And it's this kind of thing. You know, I used to work somewhere where you weren't even allowed to take photos on site without explicit permission from the security office. But that was just operating within that specific threat model. You know, Are people committing things to public repos? Yes, if we took a scenario, for example, if we have people here, it's not just about what they're leaking purposefully. It could be that they're using poor hygiene and they're signing up for things like Strava accounts with their work email. And this puts a lovely little link in there because as a red teamer, I'm not going to look for all of these people's personal emails. That'd be ridiculous. It's too much of a task to work out and try and find passwords in dumps. But if I'm looking for their domain and I see Jim from accounts has signed up for Strava and I've got a dump for Strava, I've got one of his creds right there. And this is what that kind of hygiene would have protected in the first place. And data. I won't linger too much on here because it's overdone really, but we've got so much of it. And the question is, where do we even keep it? How visible is it within our organization versus how visible is it publicly? Where are we keeping it? What is it? Have we forgotten about it? This leads us on really onto threat models. So we have this a lot. We want to do a threat model. People go, what? What is that? We have pen tests. We have all kinds of things. Why would we need one of these? The answer is context. So remember when I said everything's in scope with a threat, within the threat model of an attack surface? Not the whole truth, but it was a good headline to start with. There's a secondary level of importance here on contextualizing the risk, just like Tom was saying. You're talking about threat models. They allow you to qualify your attack surface according to your threats. And although everything is in scope, some things are obviously more pertinent to your organization. By applying a threat model to your attack surface, you get to create a landscape of threats that's actually relevant to your company specifically. So these are some of the things we go through a lot of the time when we're running these engagements. We talk through threat modeling and we cover these points. Focus there on prioritization. If you've got thousands of critical vulnerabilities, we're probably going to start patching up on the perimeter. That would make sense, right? It's about having conversations like this. You know, who would attack your company and why? This doesn't have to be a formal exercise. It could even be a conversation you have with a team over a cup of coffee. But these kind of things should be discussed. You know, who might attack your company and why? How do you go about doing it? These are the kind of things we run internally at Jumpsec to find weaknesses within our own company. You can run these as formally or as informally as you want. We sometimes put a prize at the end of them. Although I would say be suspicious if some of these attack paths are too good. Keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. But within your threat landscape, you have different things, and different things are relevant to different people. I mean, you look at a company like Twitter, and they have groups like the Saudi government infiltrating them with staff and placing them there to find dissidents within their own state. It's not something we're particularly worried about at Jumpsec, but it's about, you know, tailoring your threat model according to the threat landscape you've got. And we mentioned third-party risk, but it is whereabouts do you draw the line. We've seen so many examples of supply chain compromise recently, so we know it's not about assets that you own directly. We see this reflected in industries who, by nature of their business, have had to conduct this kind of consideration much further in advance. You know, you look at commercial banks, they've got know your customer. This has been around as a core principle and embedded in their, I suppose, compliance for many more years than we've had a look at attack surfaces. So it leads us on to tough questions like this, you know. What is your third-party risk exposure? Do you have an idea of what it is? The answer is very personal to your organization. Your threat model guides you to understand what exposure is and whether you should be implementing security controls around that exposure. So this is another exercise we play. Imagine we're organization W and we have a supplier X. How far along the supply chain do we work? It's entirely up to you. But realistically, could you see a threat actor traversing these to target your company specifically? It's fundamentally about not limiting your attack surface to assets that you own directly. This is a fun one. Again, these are casual conversations, but how would you attack your own company? What third parties would you leverage? You know, what would motivate you? I'll skip over insider risk because we do not have time for insider risk. But focusing on critical assets. Should you focus on critical assets with a question mark? Seeing a huge number of eye rolls. I'm not going to tell you that they're not important, but I put it like this. I mean, how many of you had a web app pen tested this year, annually or biannually? That's fantastic because your core service or product might be secure, but as a company, what have you actually protected? What if you have some old Netscaler VPN application sitting there with vulnerabilities? That's wide open, and as a threat actor, that's going to be the initial access that we take. So if you guys have a look under your seats, there's not actually anything there because I didn't get here early enough. But if you look on your tables, you've got some 3D glasses. If you unsheath them and pop them on with the red lens on the left, if this looks weird for you, can you imagine how weird it looks for me? So if you close your left eye, you'll be seeing things through the blue lens, hopefully. So this would be what we think most companies typically assume they have within their infrastructure. What they have as assets, what they have as staff. Pretty typical. But then if you to close your right eye, looking through the red lens, you kind of see what we're looking at. So we're seeing all these other aspects that are just not considered. You've got breached credentials, you've got open S3 buckets, vulnerable staff who you could phish. I mentioned digital hygiene, but that's not just about kind of people risk. It's not just about knowing whether somebody would open their emails and accept a phish or not. It's about, would you challenge somebody in the office about tailgating? Or we've got unsecured Jira here. We saw something in the gallery of uh-ohs earlier, just to this very point. I'll continue now because from experience, longer than about 2 minutes, you start to get a weird headache. So to conclude, I'd like to leave you with this, and that's that cybersecurity is really, as much as we forget about it, it's about people and it's about the conversations we have. Conversations at work with your colleagues and clients and conversations at home with family and friends. You can't really work these things out in a formal briefing or with questionnaires. This kind of bureaucracy kind of stifles these. If you could answer these questions at home now, I think things have gone well today. So which of your third parties would present the greatest risk to you if compromised? Hopefully not us. What open source intelligence could be gathered about your organization? What does your attack surface look like? And where does your data reside? Thank you.